Hi all. In this Zoom, I'm going to present my Making Faces Emotive Facial Muscle lecture. Usually we'd be doing this as an activity in class, but since we can only see half of our faces when we're together right now, it's going to be hard for me to share this information properly. So I'm doing it here. There is something I'm going to ask you to do before we start, though. Typically, what we would do is I'd be presenting this lecture where I am going to demonstrate and make different expressive faces with my own face, and then explain to you the muscles at work that help me make those facial movements. And while I do that, I hand you mirrors and I ask you to both engage the very same muscles that I'm talking about, make different expressions with your face, and that way you're able to observe the changes in facial shape in the mirror as you make those faces, but then also feel them in your own face, which makes it, I think, much easier to sort of understand where and how those movements occur underneath the skin level, which when you know that, it makes it the whole understanding of how to draw facial expressions make more sense to you because you've seen it and you felt it for yourself. And then when you're observing it in another face or constructing it from your imagination, you can do it with more logic. All right. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to switch to screen share. But before I do, and pause the video if you need to, would like for you to put yourself in front of a mirror so you can observe your face and make these expressions along with me as we go through the lecture. It'll keep things more interesting, I think, for you, and also it'll make this more informative. The other thing you might want is your sketchbook or a drawing pad. You can sort of sketch along with the lecture. I have illustrations all throughout, so you may make your own that are kind of similar, and that can be another way to sort of solidify this information. All right, so pause, get yourself set up with drawing materials and a mirror, and I'm gonna switch to screen share and we'll get started. All right, here we go. All right, so the Making Faces lecture, like I said, introduces you to the major muscles and muscle groups that are responsible for animating our face, making it more expressive, helping it move. The kind of muscles that are responsible for our facial movement or expressive facial movement are striated muscles. I know I'm showing you a kind of model of an arm right now, but we have these kind of muscles all through our body. They're actually the layer of muscle that's closest to skin level. They also, if you are a person who eats meat, they are the muscle layer that we would consume that way. I know that's gross, and I hope you're not eating right now, but it might help you give a context of what they look like and kind of their texture. So striated muscles are the body of the muscle is made up of lots of striations or sort of strands. They look like a series of kind of ropes all lined up next to each other. And when a muscle flexes, each individual striation actually kind of swells and compresses. So the body of the muscle changes shape in a distinct way that it shortens, but that mass has to go somewhere. So as it shortens, the striations also sort of plump out wider. And so that's where you get that effect of sort of a bulging muscle. When a muscle's in repose, it's going to look longer and leaner. When it's flexed, it shortens and it's going to sort of fill out. Looking at this little arm model, let's look at a familiar muscle of the bicep to just get a little sense of how striated muscles work in most of our body. And then I'm going to tell you the kind of neat thing that's distinct about the striated muscles in our face. And that'll be our focus for the rest. But so in most of our body, striated muscles, they grow out of the bone directly, and they begin sort of as a tendon. Then they swell into the muscle body and then assert via tendon back into bone. So they grow out of a bone via tendon. They swell into the sort of meaty muscle body, and then they insert back into a bone. The interesting thing, though, is usually that the muscle that inserts into a different bone than it has grown from. And between the point that it originates and inserts, we have a joint. And so that's really that movable part between where the muscle starts and where it finishes is the crucial element of a muscle actually creating any kind of movement, right? So for the bicep, which we see moving from the top of the humerus here, I hope you can see this, it originates from the top of the humerus, actually in 2 points, and then it moves down, finding attachments on the way down that long upper arm bone, and then it's going to insert into the very top of the ulna, which is, and the radius, actually both, which are our 2 lower bones of our forearm. So it starts up in the shoulder, goes down to the lower bones of the forearm. In between those 2 positions, we have a elbow joint, right? And so when the bicep muscle flexes, the muscle body shortens and pulls on the lower forearm bones and pulls those lower bones up towards it. All right. You can see, maybe not a ton on me, but you can see that muscle body swell, that arm gets a little bit wider. And then if you are doing it yourself, which I hope you are, you're going to feel some tension. If you touch your muscle at this point, it's going to feel hard. If you let it move slack again, it'll feel much softer. And that change in texture is really interesting. That actually isn't the muscle changing texture itself. It's because of the resistance of the tendons on either end. So it's like pulling a rope in a tug of war kind of situation. And so as the muscle shrinks, as it flexes, more tension from its origin and insertion occur, making that muscle feel much, much harder. The interesting thing is the muscle can contract without any intervention of the tendons. If it wasn't attached, it can go down to about 1/3 of its original size. But the tendinous attachments sort of provide the resistance and to a degree define or limit that movement. All right. So if a muscle contracted without its bony attachment points, providing resistance, it would still feel soft and squishy, just as it does in the more relaxed, reposed sort of state. So you'll keep that in mind in a minute. I hope I haven't muddied the waters here. But there's some muscles in our face that work that way, that have 2 bony attachments, and you will feel that same sort of tension when they flex as you do in your bicep. But then there are a lot of muscles that grow from bone, but then attach themselves to only skin, a softer, flexible part of our body. And so when they contract, they can contract further than muscles with two bony attachments, and then their texture doesn't get hard either. So the way it feels to flex a muscle in your face is probably a little bit subtler than it feels to flex a muscle in the rest of your body. But also because they don't have the same limitations or constraints by having two bony attachments, it also allows their movement to be kind of bigger, which is why our face is able to be more expressive potentially than a lot of the rest of our body, and change and flex and move in probably more interesting ways. All right, so I promise I will keep sort of reiterating that to make it make more sense, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with the slides now. So first we'll look at some of the bigger muscles that occur more on the sides of our head, and then we'll move in towards the center of our face. So the first muscles that we're going to look at are the temporalis muscles, and the temporalis muscles, let me make sure that I have the cursor you can see. Hopefully that works. Okay. The temporalis muscles originate from the top of the temporal regions of the skull. So coming up from the zygomatic here and here. And remember, we're bilateral symmetry. So sometimes I might talk about things only on one side. No, you have another one over on the other side. So these muscles originate in this sort of fan-like shape from the temporal area of your skull. And then they sort of funnel down and actually move through this opening in the zygomatic bone and attach themselves to the head of the mandible, or the top of your jawbone. So they have a bony origin on top. They move down and they actually attach themselves to a second bony insertion point with a joint in the middle. So a lot of the same rules as the bicep muscle. And what they work to do is they work to close your jaw. So what I want you to do is to flex your temporal bone. What you're going to do is you're going to put your hands on the side of your head. You're first going to yawn, which actually is extending the temporalis muscle. And then you're going to flex it by closing your jaw really hard. So try it. When you open your mouth, what you should feel is you should feel the temporalis muscle sort of extending itself, and the sides of your head should feel a little bit hollow. When you close your jaw tightly, you should feel that muscle fill out slightly. You'll feel the sides of your head feel a little bit harder, and then you also might feel a little bit of tension at the top of the origin too. Feel like a little bit of a mild headache on either side. So one more time. All right. I'm also feeling a bit of tension in the point of insertion too. So that's another thing to think about. The temporalis muscles actually have a partner in crime that also are sort of performing the same function, and they also occur in our face. They're the masseter muscles. So these striated muscles originate from the bottom border of the zygomatic bone right here and there. Then they move over the angle of the mandible and insert into its bottom edge. So again, also two bony attachment points, an origin up in the cheek, moving over the joint of the jaw, and then inserting into the bottom edge of your jaw. We're going to test this with the same movement we did last time, but this time put your hands right on either side of your jaw, just like this. Same thing. We will let our jaw sort of go slack and then close it tightly. Tight. There again, you will feel the stiffening and swelling of the masseter muscle and a little bit of tension at the origin point up in the cheek and at the insertion point at the bottom edge of the jaw. Both of these muscles are there to help close your mouth. All of the ones that are actually working to open our mouth are way less visible, so we aren't talking to them, but about them, but they're quite a complicated sort of network that originates actually from your spine and lives underneath your jaw. So yeah, that's where the muscles that open your mouth occur. All right. Now, for the rest of the muscles that we're going to talk about, though, these are the ones I really call the emotive facial muscles. And I mentioned this just a little bit ago, but the rest of our facial muscles actually have bony points of origins where they begin, but they're always inserting into the skin of our face rather than another bony attachment. And also, if you look at the skull, you can see that most of the bony shapes in our face are fused together. So we don't have any joints except for the joint that allows us to open and close our jaw. So if we had our facial muscles both originating and attaching to bony points or stiff parts of the body, our face wouldn't move at all. So the fact that they originate from bone, which is what striated muscles do, but insert into skin allows for a lot more flexibility and, like you said, more expressive stuff, expressiveness of the facial movements. So here we go. This is where I think our faces will get more animated and the movements I describe will get more fun. All right, so the first muscle we're going to look at is the frontalis muscle. The frontalis muscle originates from the top of the frontal bone. Here it is on my little skeleton friend. The point would be about here on me. We see all of these muscles are going to grow as two mirrored shapes on either side of your longitudinal midline. So you can see, I'll be saying frontalis, and we'll see two shapes represented. All right. So that muscle, like I said, it grows from the top of the frontal bone, and it's going to insert in to the eye skin kind of right along that eyebrow ridge. It also has lots of little skin attachment points all the way on its way down. When the frontalis flexes, its long straight striations shrink and swell and lift your eyebrows up. So go ahead and engage your frontalis. This leaves you with an expression of surprise. All right. You'll notice that because the muscle attaches to skin all the way down its whole path, when the striations shrink, you end up with sort of ridge-like folds or puckers all the way up your forehead. All right. And then you're going to feel tension kind of only in at the bony origin. The skin attachments all the way up, they will still feel soft and pliable because they can move with the muscle, but you'll feel a little bit like a low grade sort of headache up towards the top edge of the muscle origin. So see if you can sort of notice that sensation as well. All right, right now I'm engaging both of my frontalis muscles, both on the left side and the right, but we can, and I'm not that good at it, but you can sort of engage that muscle independently too. And so instead of looking really surprised, you could be a little bit more coy and suspicious, or maybe maniacal. I need to train my muscles better. I'm not that good at raising just one eyebrow, but that's what I'm trying to do here. If I was a better evil villain, I'd be really good at that, but I'm not. All right, let's look at the next muscle. So the Procerus muscle is a muscle that originates from your nose bridge, kind of on either side of the longitudinal midline. All right. And then it's interesting, the striations go diagonally upwards on either side. They almost look like sort of wings moving up, and insert into the head of your eyebrow skin, kind of on either side. And again, like all the muscles, they're going to have skin attachments all the way along their path. When you engage your Procerus muscle, what's going to happen is the striations are going to shrink, and then they're also sort of going to straighten out as they shrink, pulling the eyebrows both towards each other and then down towards the nose. So I'm engaging my Procerus right now, and what it makes me look like is it makes me look like I'm angry. You know, maybe on my way I'm a little confused, but ultimately my eyebrows have been cast down. I have this wrinkly fold in the center. Sometimes you even get this, you can see the sort of swelling of the muscle in between. And it's this frustrated sort of angry look that you achieve with your when you engage your Procerus muscle. So don't get mad at me, but engage your Procerus muscle right now. All right. This information can be kind of hard, so I get it. Because so maybe you aren't engaging your Procerus, maybe you're not mad about it, but you're feeling a little more confused, maybe a little hopeless. And what you might actually be seeing in the mirror is you've engaged your corrugator muscle. Your corrugator muscle is a muscle that has its bony point of origin. So comes out of the bone about halfway through the brow bone above each eye. All right. And then it looks kind of similar to the Procerus. It moves in a diagonal direction and attaches itself to the skin at the head of the eyebrow on either side. So when we engage our corrugator muscle, what happens is the brows pull apart ever so slightly. Here I was with Procerus, here I am with the corrugator, so they pull back away from each other, and then they also lift slightly. People call the corrugator muscle the grief muscle. It sort of makes your eyebrows sort of rise up and arc up towards the center, and so you have this look that looks sort of sad, sort of desperate, sort of like a guilty puppy kind of looking up at you after they've chewed up your shoe or something. So it's sometimes harder to do this one on command because it's so attached to an emotion that I'm hoping you're not feeling right now. But if you can, try to engage your corrugator muscle to create that sort of sad, I'm confused, I don't know what to do look on your face. All right. You'll feel the most tension towards the center of each eyebrow because, again, that's the bony origin point for the corrugator. All right, the next muscle we're going to talk about you're engaging voluntarily, but you might not really even know you're doing it because a lot of times this muscle engages when there's just a bad sort of spunk in the room, and that's the nasalis muscle. So the nasalis muscle's bony origin is also towards the center line of the nasal bone. So right here, and again, we're doing it on either side. And then those muscles are going to move down and attach themselves to the skin on either side of the nose bridge and almost move down to attach to the edges of the wings of your nose and then the very top of your the skin of your upper kind of lip. All right. And so when you engage your corrugator muscle, what is going to happen is the striated muscle is going to shrink. And then also shrink towards that center line again. So you're going to see a swelling around the nose ridge on either side. And then you also see these kind of the volume around that nose bridge sort of swell up and kind of pull towards one another. The other thing you sometimes get is some kind of folding and some sort of vertical lines where the skin attaches to the muscle along its way. So just pretend you're smelling and hopefully it's not real. It's unfortunate if you're in a stinky place right now, but act like you're smelling something a little foul. All right. And there you'll feel a little bit of tension right towards the center. You'll see a lot of swelling through the sides of your nose. And that's how you'll know that you've engaged your nasalis muscle. Now, hopefully that stink was just sort of a passing fancy, but sometimes you're not that lucky. Sometimes it's building, it's coming closer to you. You know, you haven't gotten the breeze you needed to sort of waft it away. So sometimes muscles work in pairs and to build really, really expressive facial movements. And so let's say that smell is awful and you've moved from just like noticing to being quite disgusted by it. You might be at the point where you go from, ew, this face is made by a paired muscle movement. So to do this, I have engaged my nasalis muscle, but then I've also engaged its partner in crime, which sits right next to it, which is the levator labii superioris. All right, so this muscle, I'm gonna let it go for just a second so I can talk into it. This muscle originates from the zygomatic bone, kind of right near the tear duct on either side of your eye, and that's its bony origin place. So that's its sort of fixed point. Then it's going to attach to the skin of the cheek, moving down on either side of the nose. It'll actually also attach to the wings of your nose on either side, and then really move down to attach itself to much of the skin that covers over the maxilla is the upper lip. All right. When that muscle shortens, it's going to lift the upper lip up and also flare your nostrils just a little bit like that. So usual nasalis, levator labii superioris. The other thing you'll notice is when it lifts the upper lip skin, it reveals the teeth as well. So you have this serious look of disgust. It also can be convey a look of anger, which often sort of can lead to the other, right? So you could either go from ew to disgusted to angry, or angry to disgusted to kind of, all right? Moving on, so there they are, paired movements. Ugh. Moving down, we're gonna get to another really interesting facial muscle, and that's the orbicularis oris. Now, first, I was telling you about the muscles that control our jaw that have two bony attachment points. The last few slides, I was telling you about muscles that have a bony point of origin, but then they attach to skin to make more pliability. The orbicularis oris actually has kind of its own set of rules. It is a muscle with striations that are continuous concentric circles. So picture, just kind of, if you make sort of spiraling circles, wrap it all the way around your mouth, then you're thinking about the shape of the orbicularis oris. You can see in my illustration, it sort of makes the mouth look a little bit clowny. All right. The Orbicularis originates out of the skin of the lip, and it also inserts into the skin of the lip. It has no bony attachment whatsoever, which makes it our most flexible and pliable muscle in the whole space. I would say the whole body, we actually have one other, so it's a sphincter muscle, and we have one other sphincter muscle. You might want to know where it is. It's the other place. I guess, yeah, it's your butt. Anyway, so, but the orbicularis works the same way. When the muscle striations contract, they are able to contract fully to a full 1/3 of their original size, and it's going to close the mouth in all directions kind of simultaneously. So if I'll have to close my mouth to do this, but when I engage my sphincter muscle fully, I'm going to go from a wide mouth to a tight sort of kiss face. Ready? I'm going to explain it, and I want you to be doing this yourself and looking at the mirror. So when you contract that sphincter muscle, what you'll notice is all of the striations have contracted at the same time. They've contracted in a way that shrinks the whole circle, but they have their skin attachments all the way around. So you get these sort of radiating lines all the way around that mouth shape. And your mouth is going to go, its opening is going to go down to about 1/3 of its original size. So watch me do it again. All right. So because of that flexibility in drawing, it's really going to be important to sort of notice what the mouth is doing. You can't expect that you're going to be able to align that shape under the eyes or sort of use it in a structural way, because it's very, very malleable. I can go that tight. There's also, and we'll talk about that next, muscles that allow that sort of pliable shape to widen too. So measuring is super key, especially in drawing the mouth shapes. All right. One of other muscles that affects our the sort of shapes through our cheeks and through our mouth is the buccinator. The buccinator muscle originates from the rami, or the upper kind of sides. Am I telling you the right? The buccinator, I'm sorry. Oops, I've confused you a little. So this muscle actually does have two bony points of origin. It originates in the maxilla, kind of on either side of the dental arch. So right here and right here. And then it has skin attachments the whole way back through the cheeks, so all through here and all through here. And then it inserts into the angles of the mandible right here, or the rami of the mandible right there and right there. So your jawbone. And when that muscle contracts, this is going to be subtle, especially on me, because I have kind of a soft round face. But when it contracts, it sort of sucks your cheeks in slightly to give them sort of a hollow look. So I will engage it now. All right. It can be very expressive on certain faces. Unfortunately, it's not on mine, but think about, kind of good selfie pose where you're sort of pulling your cheeks sort of in slightly, making yourself look a little, I don't know. more like a Kardashian or something, you're engaging your buccinator muscle to do it. More functionally, what it's doing is this muscle does a lot of work to sort of keep your cheeks taut. So then when you're talking or when you're eating, the skin of your cheeks doesn't sort of get in the way and you don't end up accidentally biting the inside of your mouth. All the time, which you would if you've ever had like local anesthetic from the dentist, it may have numbed this muscle, and so you end up biting your cheek a lot after because you can't sort of engage that muscle and can't feel it when you do. So that's the buccinator. All right. Moving on, these ones we'll be back in muscles that are a little easy to see here. I do smile a lot, so I can definitely engage my zygomaticus muscle. Pretty obvious from my little illustration. The zygomaticus major muscle originates from the sides of your zygomatic bones, kind of the outsides of your cheekbones, like here and here. It's a long, somewhat narrow muscle. So begins here, has skin attachments all the way down, but this long diagonal muscle moves down and attaches to the skin at the corner of your mouth. So when it engages, it's going to pull the corners of the mouth wider towards the origins on the outside of the cheek, and then also up into a smiley face. All right, because it's grabbing the corners and coming out from the cheek. It isn't the muscle that working alone is going to engage a full broad mouth smile. To get yourself to the point where you're showing teeth when you smile, you also have to engage the zygomaticus major, minor with it. So the zygomaticus minor sits just inside the major, and that's where it originates. So like the fronts of your cheeks here and here. And then it's a little bit wider as a muscle, and it goes down and attaches to the skin of your lip on either side. So when it engages, it stretches that sort of centered skin of your lips out, and then also pulls it up into a big smile. So repose, zygomaticus major, zygomaticus major and minor. And you will absolutely feel tension through the cheeks. That's when you're like, my face hurts. It's those points of origin where you really feel the tension in that, when you are really engaging the zygomaticus major and minor for a long period of time. Now, I just showed you zygomaticus minor's movement as a paired movement, but one of the coolest things I think is how, whether the movement is paired or whether it's by itself, it can lead to really different expressions. So when we pair the zygomaticus minor movement with the major, we get the biggest, brightest smile. But if we just engage the zygomaticus muscle alone, again, that muscle is moving from the fronts of your cheeks down to the skin of your lips. That just moves your skin of your lips up and out just slightly. And so without the other muscle to lift the corners, engaging the zygomaticus minor really gives you the opposite in expression. It gives you an expression that is a frown. All right, that lifts my lip up, and the outside corners of the mouth get to stay down. All right, we can make that sad face even sadder if we pair the muscle movement of the zygomatic minor with the mentalis muscle as well. So the mentalis muscle is a little short muscle. It has its bony origin right below your lower set of teeth, kind of above your chin right here. All right. And then it inserts into the skin of the chin at the bottom of the jaw. So here. And so when that muscle engages, these short little striations, they shrink up, pulling your chin up towards your lower set of teeth. And secondary sort of function of this movement and the swelling of the muscle moving up is it pushes your little lip out. So you can get a boo, pouty, sad face. You can definitely feel the tension kind of right at the bottom of your lower dental line. And then a lot of times, I'll get closer so you can see this, because of all the skin attachments of the muscle along the way in the chin, you get some kind of rippling in the chin. Okay. All right. If you pair the mentalis with the mentalis movement with a partner's beside it, you can get yet another interesting expression. So beside the mentalis is the depressor labii inferioris and the depressor anguli oris. They almost always work together, so we don't need to break them apart, although you can see them in this movement or in this slide somewhat separated. They originate from the lower edge of the mandible or the jawline, right here and here, and they insert into the skin of the lower lip, kind of rising along the dental arch all the way out to the corners of the mouth. We call them actually the antagonists to the smiley face. They bring us back to a neutral position, but also we can engage them further. And when their muscles contract, it's going to move the corners of the mouth down and out. And they are called the anger muscle. You bare your teeth. You are engaging the depressor labii inferioris and depressor angularis. You'll also when you make that face, like I mentioned before, the mentalis is also usually engaged too. So chin kind of comes up, lip puffs out, and we are pulling the corners of the lip out further. I made a pretty scary face there. So I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't, in reaction, engaged your bicularis oculi. All right. The orbicularis oculi is similar to the orbicularis oris. That's why they have similar names. It's a partial sphincter muscle. So it has no bony origin. So that's similar, but it does originate from a tendon, actually, which is more stable, more of a fixed point than just skin. So the tendon that the orbicularis oculi originates from is actually visible on the skin surface, which is extra weird. So if you look at just above my lash line, there's like a little, and look in the mirror on yourself too, there's this little shiny, slight texture difference of a line. It looks just, I guess, a little bit more pearlescent than the rest of your skin would probably be the best way to describe it. And you'll see that shift in texture right above your lash line, both on the bottom and on the top. All right, I hope you can see that in the mirror. I know it's a little hard on camera. Yeah, it's the tendon that sits between the opening of your eye. From there, the striations of the orbicularis oculi attach to the skin surface, and they move around in again, kind of concentric circles. All right. And when they contract back towards that tendon line that sits just below or just beyond your lash lines. All right. And so when they contract, what they work to do is close your eyes really tightly. We have deeper, muscles that just control the simple sort of blinking and re-wetting of our eyes. That's actually connected to a different part of our nervous system. And they sit way below skin level, so we're not worrying about them as much here. But the orbicularis oculi is responsible for this move that I'm demonstrating right now. What you should see is that because of all the skin attaches, I'm getting lots of radiating folds coming in towards kind of every direction of my eye. My eyes have closed really tightly, but because it's not just a skin attachment, because that muscle originates from a tendon, which is more stable or fixed, you will see the sort of line between my eyes stay the same width and relatively the same shape. So here we go. Whew. So it doesn't shrink in every direction in quite the same way as the mouth does. We still sort of see that line shape of the eye, and that's because these tendons are also, they have bony attachments back to our skull and in towards the tear duct. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to do that one more time. So here's my orbicularis oculi in repose. Here they are contracted. All right. I know you can't see that for yourself if you do it on both eyes, but you could probably contract just one to make a kind of very aggressive wink. All right. All right. The last muscle that I'm going to tell you about actually sort of enters and exits the face. I just kind of like to land on it because I think it's sort of a funny one. It is the platysma muscle. It's one of our stranger sort of defense mechanisms is to engage the platysma. It's one of the biggest, sort of broadest muscles in our whole body. It originates from the entire length of your collarbone on either side, coming down to the pit of your neck. It then moves up as big, flat sort of panels that cover your whole neck, attaching to the skin all of the way. It's striations all the way up, and then it just inserts into, kind of moves up to your face and gets smaller as it goes, so it finally sort of completes its attachment points at the corners of your mouth. All right, so it comes from here, covers your entire neck, and then comes and attaches to just the corner of your mouth. And the only function that it has, what it does, is it lets you make this hiss, which apparently was terrifying to predators in our caveman days or something. I'm not sure, but that's how you make it. It's a fun face. And I think what I like about it is when you do it, you can really feel that attachment kind of all the way up. And you can see how when the muscles contract, they reveal a lot more of the structure going on in your neck. So do it one more time. And screenshot me to blackmail me there, I guess, if you want, because that's an unfortunate face that I've just made. All right. That is my lecture. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll talk about it in class too. All right.